Good evening, everyone. I call the March 12th, 2026 Water and Sewer Advisory Committee meeting to order. Wally, do we have a quorum?
We do, sir.
Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The agenda has been adopted. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting?
Yes.
Any corrections or omissions to know? All right, hearing none, I'll accept the motion to accept the minutes as written.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Second.
Here, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries and the minutes have been approved. Wally, the floor is yours.
Good evening. We appreciate everybody coming out to spend tonight with us. We have a couple of items for you. Tonight we have the, says FY27 budget discussion, but we'll be discussing the water and sewer rate model. And we have Ms. Sabrina Adams, our finance director, here to present that to you. This would have been to you last month, but we ended up having to cancel, so we weren't able to make it. So council has seen this presentation, but we still think it's important because that the board gets the opportunity to review and ask any questions. And following that, we'll give you an update of where we are on our capital improvement plan, kind of what we've done since we brought you the draft, and then where we're going next. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sabrina.
Okay. Thank you for having me. As Wally said, I am here to mostly talk about the water sewer rate model, but it is a part of the budget process, a large part of the budget process when it comes to water sewer. So just an overview and reminder on the budget. Our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th, and we're working on the FY27 budget right now. North Carolina requires that we adopt a balanced budget by June 30th. That means that our revenues have to match our expenses. As far as the tax rate, which is not related to water sewer, but just for general information, it's to be determined at this point. Council will set the tax rate, property tax rate, as part of the budget. Of course, this is a revaluation year. I'm sure everyone knows everyone's received their property tax bills, so that'll be something that the council is working on as we get closer to the June adoption deadline. Typically, I know in the past we've had a practice of doing a 2.25% increase for several years now. I think since FY19, with the exception of the 1 year we had the ARPA funds that were initially put into water sewer. But this year, based on the water sewer rate model, which we'll talk a little bit more, we did decide to recommend to council a 1% water and sewer rate increase as opposed to the 2.25. And then we do not have a recycling or residential sanitation rate increase planned for this year. We are looking at doing a similar model for the solid waste fund that we do for water sewer. So right now we're just holding for this year while we get that done. And then our current FY27 budget schedule, we do plan to deliver the proposed budget to council at the April 7th workshop. And at that time, we will also post the budget on the website, and hard copies will be available for review in the clerk's office or at the public library. And then on April 21st, we will have a public hearing on the budget. And then we'll have another workshop on April 5th. So that will give council plenty of time to digest the comments, any comments from the public hearing, and research whatever they need to do and any topics that may come up. And then we'll actually consider adoption, hopefully, at the May 19th council meeting. So just a snapshot of where we are with water sewer fund for the expenditures. This just gives you an idea of expenditures FY26 amended compared to what are projected currently in FY27. We did prepare this for the meeting that the weather got us, so the numbers may have changed a little bit on the amended since then with, I think we've had a couple of budget amendments. But you can see for the water and sewer fund, we're projected less expenditures there, about $3 million, $3.9 million, and then we do have an increase in projected transfers out for capital projects. So overall, in FY26 amended, we're at $39.4 million and projected $44.1 for FY27. And then, as I mentioned, if we have expenditures, our revenues must match that. So these are our projected revenues. Our charges for services, of course, are the user fees generated by the customers on the water sewer bills. And you can see between some conservative growth and usage and a rate increase, we're projecting an increase there in revenues, and non-operating revenues increasing slightly. And as of right now, we're not planning on any appropriated fund balance for FY27. But of course, that's typically what changes through the year when we do the budget amendments. And then we have our other budgetary appropriations, which is a fancy way of saying transfers. So we're transferring out to capital projects, or transferring in from capital projects when we close capital projects, or when we borrow money for vehicles and equipment. That's part of that $11 million. So are there any questions on that part before I go into the rate model?
Yeah, I'll ask one.
Okay.
So you put it back? Yeah. So you said a 1% rate increase, but you've got like a projected revenues for charges at what, 7 or 8% increase?
It could be, it's not just all rate increase, it could be some growth, depending on the meter count that we had in FY26 that we amended compared to now. Projected growth from some annexations that are coming, other user fees, leases on the water towers. So it's not just specifically it's a large part of it is the water sewer rate increase, but there's some other revenues included.
Charge for services include impact fees or development services? Is that what you're talking about?
It includes system development.
System development fees. It does, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and we have
Right.
several major
Yeah.
production subdivisions going.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. So then the rate model, how we come to the 1%, we purchased a rate model several years ago. We've gone through a couple of financial advisors to update the model. I think a year or two ago, we received a new model from First Tryon, so they've done the latest model. But we do make some assumptions when we use the model, and the assumptions that we have in it for this year are the non-rate-based revenues to grow at 1% annually as well. And then expense escalation, 1.5% to 5% per year based on the different categories. So for example, salaries we have in there for 5% because we know that will be part of the manager recommended budget. But things like chemicals are not, maybe not 5%, and even between water and sewer, they may be different as well. So you may have 1% increase in chemicals in water and 3% in sewer, or it could be the other way, I'm not sure. But it definitely depends on the category. And we have contracted services and a lot of different categories that go into that. And then we do use the FY27 proposed CIP, which Wally will talk about, and we include all of the projects through 2036. And this particular model also includes some additional funding for some possible land acquisition. And so based on that, just a couple of screenshots from the model, the planned annual water and sewer rate increases of 1%. This rate does not change based on any capital needs. If you recall, there's two scenarios that we run. There's the just-in-time rate increases, which is what the model dictates that we have to meet certain financial benchmarks, and then there's the planned scenarios, which are where we typically override it with the 2.25% to see where we'll come out at the end. But looking at this, you can see that for FY27, if we do a rate increase for FY27 through 2029, based on the revenues and the current expenditure projections, we would not need a rate increase in future years. And so that is why we decided to do the 1% this year instead of the 2.25. And of course, we do reevaluate every year to see if that changes. But we feel like just based on where we are with the current revenues and then the projects that we have, we wanted to just hold for now. Wally, they're completing, which you probably already know about this as well, but tell me the name again.
A water and sewer system model. So a model, an actual model, operational model, not financial calculations, that shows demand, service areas, demand needs, failing infrastructure, and then outlines projects for the future. So if we're seeing, excessive demand in an area, or surcharging manholes, or failing pump stations, those kind of things, the model will identify those projects, tell us where to schedule them, and then we'll program them into the CIP, and that will affect this. That model's not, it's two models, one for water, one for sewer, and they come with it'll be a master plan, and that of course will be presented to you, but we're just not far enough along in that process that we were comfortable plugging new or significantly changed projects into the CIP, so that's part of why you're seeing it like this.
Right.
So will that ever increase the 2.5% on the CIP? If your models identify other projects?
That'll be a discussion when we get there. We try to do a very good job of scheduling projects. So, and I hate to say this, a little bit of our business is unknown. If you look back at the the Highway 24 project that failed, that's going to be a $2 million fix that we weren't anticipating. So by the time we get it done, hate to say it, we just don't know. So we are trying to be more proactive than reactive. So, and with deteriorating infrastructure, sometimes you don't know if it's going to last 5 years or 10 years, or maybe it holds on. So some of it is trying to appropriately prioritize those. That's why we're trying to go to a model that gives us predictive analytics, and then growth. I always say if I had a great crystal ball, I wouldn't be here, because I've seen pieces of property not developed that I was positive would develop quicker, and I've seen pieces of property that I couldn't have imagined that would have been the first one to come in. So that's always a challenge, because especially on the sewer side, because we have basins, and if you get a lot of pressure in one basin, then you could have to do significant upgrades in that basin. The good thing is we have the Western Regional, which is probably the largest project and probably the largest expenditure. I didn't go look at the breakout, but knowing where we are in that project is the largest expenditure that we're having in water and sewer right now. So that project will take a lot of pressure off the existing system. but there's still phases that'll have to be constructed in order to get all of that pressure off the existing system. Eventually, that project will tie in all the way down to Carolina Forest. And right now, the phase that's bid out only collects up to Williamsburg. So there's still a whole large area of Western Boulevard to be talked about.
When's the ribbon cutting?
Great question. We have some challenges, but it's, I think the pump station's scheduled for 28, if I remember correctly. So there's still a lot of work to be done. But we do have some challenges, primarily on the force main section. So
with the potential of the CIP changing and us not knowing what those projects will be, we thought that the 1%, again, just based on where we are with revenues and expenditures right now, was probably the best way to go, at least for this year.
Mr. Terry had a question.
Can you do something for maybe people that are watching or whatever? Me and Randy are about the oldest guys here, and so we lived through the time where we went through the rates. Remember, the rates didn't have any particular format, a better word, because some counties, I know one particular, went up 22% on the water bill.
We did that.
Yeah, and back in the day, we did too, which made us do something different, which keeps the rates down for the people that don't realize. They don't even like the 1% probably, but if they understand, what it could be, if you could explain what we had done back then so that people wouldn't feel the deep pain of raising the
Especially with property taxes, yeah.
yeah, with everything else raising.
So we just talked about this, actually. I did those slides at the council meeting, and I took it out to save you guys 15 extra slides. I thought I talked way too long about the water sewer rate model, but historically, I think it was back around 2007, 2008 timeframe, we did have some large increases. I think between 27 and
It was 3 years of double
3 years
digits.
in a row.
Of double-digit
back-to-back.
increases, over 20% for 1 or 2 of those years.
So it was a time where they did not have they didn't have a water sewer rate model, and the water plant was coming online, the wastewater or land app was expanding. So there were a lot of large capital projects which dictated the need to increase the rates to cover that, but it wasn't planned ahead. So in 2009, after that happened, that's when we went out for bids for the first rate model. And since that time, we did do some rate increases, not double digits, but we did have some larger ones. But I think in 2019 was when the Water Sewer Advisory Board first started to recommend that we do the 2.25% each year. And council has supported that historically. So that's why it's so important to do. And we'll see it in a minute right here on these just-in-time slides. But when you don't do those smaller incremental increases early on, it compounds, and by the time you get to where you have to have one, it's a large increase.
Well, the state was a big factor when the Black Creek restriction, because we didn't need the $40-50 million water plant that we had to do.
Right.
Yeah, that was so what Mr. Thomas is referring to is we had an unfunded mandate to reduce our withdrawal 75% over 15 years. So, and if you imagine what was happening to Jacksonville during that time period, we were growing and losing our water supply. So we had to get out of, well, not out, but we had to reduce our withdrawal from the Black Creek, which forced us into the Castle Hayne, which required a water treatment plant. Before then, we had abnormally low water rates because we didn't have a treatment facility. All we did was pump it out of the ground and feed chlorine. So it was extremely cheap water. And, I will say, going back, I was here for those increases. One of the first years in engineering was one of the first years, so I fielded those calls and answered those questions. And looking back, I can't say that unfunded mandates won't catch us in the future. We know we, at some point, will face the one with lead service lines, right? And galvanized service lines. We will have to replace those. Who knows if money will be available for us to do that? So it could be that we do that at our cost. The difference is now we have a model that we can program, schedule that in, and we don't take all that hit in 1, 2, 3 years. We can plan for it because the unfunded mandate, the actual Capacity Use Act went in place in 1999. So I think it was either approved in 99 or presented in 99 and approved in like 2000. So if you look at the time where we spent the money, which was somewhere around, the bulk of the money was probably somewhere around 09, or I know that the plant was online in 10. So maybe 2008, 2009 is where a lot of that money, those expenditures happened. We could have been planning ahead. But we didn't have the tools at the time. So that's why we have tools now. Like I said, I fielded a lot of those calls. I know Sabrina did too.
I worked in water billing at the time, so it was not a happy place to be.
You have the two people that lived through that, not wanting to live through that again.
Yeah.
So
Good.
we will model anything we could possibly get data on to prevent that in the future.
Yes. So the other scenario is the just-in-time rate increase. So that is where we let the model calculate when we will need the increase and what the increase would have to be. So this particular year, you can see that the model does not project any rate increases for us until we get to 2035, which is great. That means we're in a great place right now, very stable financially. But then when we do reach those years, we have those large rate increases again of 8.99% and 12.9%.
Is that including the projected 2% a year now, or is that above that?
Zero.
That would be nothing now.
That was if we do
Nothing now, yes,
Yeah.
we do, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we continue on at what we discussed about gradual rate every year, that won't happen?
Right.
Okay.
And I
As the
think-
city grows again,
Well, yeah.
And
annexation.
some of this, I think that we're in as good of a place as we are now, largely in part to the grant funds that we got. I mean, we got $23 million in water and sewer and grant funds. So without that, I mean, if we didn't have those grant funds, which the original model didn't have included, if we didn't have those, then we wouldn't be where we are today. We would be looking at least at the 2%
Right.
increases every year. So there, and then again, this year, and we'll talk about this in a minute, we had very few projects that we added to the CIP because we know that water and sewer rate model is, those water and sewer system models are coming. So we didn't see the point in identifying a bunch of projects out there 8-10 years from now without knowing that we're going to get much better data for the next CIP update. So I can't say what that'll look like. What I can say is we will try to balance those projects so that we don't have significant rate increases.
And of course, we are looking at the model every year. Wally and I sit down together and we do move projects around in the model to try to keep the expenditures, relatively stable year to year so that we can keep the rate increases stable as well.
The other thing that, we do have increases in there, but if you look at what's happened to diesel fuel in the last 2 weeks, my kid drives a diesel truck. He's over $5 a gallon right now. So he needs to drive less, but, it was 3 like a month ago.
What's going on in the world, though?
And
That has to stabilize.
well, and it's funny, I received a copy of a letter for a chemical company that we don't use this company currently, but they sent a letter to one of our neighboring partners that basically said, we can't honor your chemical because our, whatever, ingredient's the wrong word, but whatever compound they use to formulate that chemical actually comes from a company in Iran. And they're done. They're closed, they're not working. So the company basically said, we can't supply this.
You can't use anything else.
Not you, it'll cost you more, we can't supply it. Which means you gotta find somebody else to get it from, and you're gonna pay more because there's less supply. So we don't know if, and it is, it's not a compound that we feed, but we do use one very similar. So we expect more like this will come because many of these chemicals come from other places.
That's why we gotta become self-sufficient, don't depend on anybody.
Yeah. But I mean, that's not, but when we're talking rate increases, that's not factored in because we can't predict that. We have a nice stable of what the market's done historically, not, we're in a period where we've got to figure that out.
So for the annual rate increases, doing the 1% every year, we meet our financial targets, and every year keep our minimum debt service coverage at 1.86, which is very important. We have covenants on the revenue bonds that we have to meet, so we have to be sure that we are meeting those debt coverage ratios. Our minimum days cash on hand at 380 days, which the model, the goal in the model is 365 days. And then our average customer bill in 2036 is, for water is $34.79 and $62.27 for sewer. So that's at the end of the rate model, doing the 1% for 3 years, then this is where we end up with the water sewer rates.
And that's the average, not the minimum.
Right, that's the average,
So
so it's
that's higher
6,000 gallons.
higher than-
Right, that is a 5/8 inch residential meter with 6,000 gallons of usage. And then this is just a snapshot, the graphics for those same targets. You see the red line for the debt service coverage and the days cash on hand. Those are the two main financial targets that the model tries to reach. And then on the bottom left-hand corner is the water sewer rates. So you can see that we have those very small increases in the beginning, and then it stays the same for the remainder of the model. And then if we do the just-in-time rate increases, we are still meeting those financial targets because that's exactly what the model is designed to do. Our debt service coverage will be a little bit lower, as well as our minimum days cash on hand at 365 days. But you can see the average customer bill at the end, when you get to 2036, is quite a bit higher than it is on the 1% increases. So just a reminder, it's $34.79 for water and $62.27 for sewer, compared to $41.80 for water and $74.18. So that's that compounding difference that we talked about with not doing any rate increases and doing large ones just when you need them. And then this is the same snapshot for the financial targets. You can see we're just meeting those debt service coverage ratios and the days cash on hand as the model's designed to do. And then the water sewer rates stay flat at the beginning, but then spike up at the end. And that was it for the water sewer rate model, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I guess we might ask, so the regular budget had like $11 million for transfers and borrowing. What kind of borrowing do we have in mind?
We borrow for vehicles and equipment.
Oh, so no more bonds?
We don't have
at
any
this time?
bonds for this year, no.
Okay.
Yeah, but we do have some expensive equipment. I mean, a jet truck is $600,000 or $700,000.
And when you do the analysis, obviously you do water and sewer together. You don't do the analysis for what the water side needs and the sewer side needs as far as the rate, when you're looking at the rate.
We try to break it up. Like if you look in the CIP,
Oh, sure.
we do identify water and we do identify sewer. And the model does break up water and sewer. The challenge comes when you start talking operational budget. The water plant's easy, right? Because it's all in water. The sewer, the wastewater LTS, wastewater plant is in wastewater. But then you have utilities maintenance, which is a large budget that does both. So we do try to break it up where we can, but some, when you get into something that touches both water and sewer, you're typically using a percentage split or something like that. And historically, sewer is more expensive to treat, to move, operate, and replace.
Right, we do. The financial statements are very detailed and the general ledger is very detailed in tracking the expenses for the water, the water plant compared to wastewater. But for the purposes of the model, all the expenditures are broken out by departments, but it's not specifically tied back to, calculating the rates.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. 'Cause I know that like what I was saying, the equipment such as the trash sanitation trucks, and they have a life, how long those things are supposed to last. And we push the envelope sometimes to get them more service out of them. So it saves up, hopefully the model should indicate also how long the longevity of those equipment is.
Yes,
Before
we
you start
are.
spraying that.
We do actually, I did not talk about that, but we do factor in, we have an equipment replacement plan that has 5 years of equipment and what's coming due for replacement. So we have a good idea, about as good as we do for any other budget 5 years out, of what we'll be replacing. And so we do factor that in as well for capital outlay. So that is in there. It could, like Wally said, when
Yeah, that's an
Times
important commodity
get
for a lot of
crazy.
people out there, because they look at their people pick up the yard waste and trash, and, we appreciate everything those guys do, and they do a phenomenal job, so we want them to have the best to do what they do, but no, they do a great job out there.
We do the 5-year ERP, and we're trying to do a better job of getting things in there that may not would have been in there in the past. An example of that could be pumps, like at the wastewater plant. We have traditionally, it's easy to say we need to replace a jet truck. It's much harder to say, that pump that's mounted inside of something needs to be replaced. But if you put a motor and a pump together at LTS, you're about $300,000. So it is a significant, and there's 6 of them, right? So it's a significant investment. But when you're thinking equipment replacement plan, that's not the first place your mind goes, right? So it goes to the trucks and the tractors and the excavators and the jet trucks and those kind of things that we need. So we are trying to do a better job of identifying those other things and wrapping programs, ongoing programs around those to be more preventative.
HVAC.
And there's another one, HVAC. We just replaced 3 HVAC units at the main pump station. Matter of fact, I think they're putting them online today. But it has 6 total, and we need to do the other 3. So it's things like that. We are trying to get those things in. If you think of the number of facilities the city has that has HVAC systems, and then the years that they were installed, it's a huge lift for staff, but we are trying to get much better and proactive at getting that stuff in. The other thing I wanted to add, just because we talked about 1%, right? So I'm just going to do easy math. we're saying $34.79, I'm just going to use that number, right? We're talking 34 cents a month for water, right? That's, so 35, if we round, right? But, I mean, so the point is, it's not, that's the advantage of doing small incremental increases. You're talking cent, not dollars a month.
So you're talking for the full year, what people will pay for one coffee a day?
It's about right. I love it when somebody else puts it in perspective for me. I don't have to. And that might not be a Starbucks coffee, right, Sabrina?
That's my business.
So, but I mean, that's what people will buy bottled water and pay much more than the increase that we're talking about per month.
Well, the best news is no sanitation.
Well,
I mean, that's going to
Yeah.
help.
And again, that we're looking very good based on what we have, but we need a formal, I'd love to put everything in some sort of model to use, at least we can use history to try to predict better what we're going to need and do. And plus it makes it easier to plan. Sabrina will tell you, a large part of the model, which is why sometimes we end up with later changes to the CIP, is us going through and saying, if we slide this project 1 year, it has less of an impact on the rate increases, because for whatever reason that happens to fall in a year that has less cash outlay or it pushes your borrowing 1 year. It does make a difference. 1 year can make a difference. We've seen that. So we try to be very careful when we lay these projects out. So when she says it's an effort, it's literally me sitting in her office for probably 4 or 5 hours and saying, well, what happens if we do this, right? So there is a lot that goes into it. So a lot of credit to Sabrina for that. All right, any other questions on the rate model? So I just wanted to quickly give you an update of where we are on the capital improvement plan. Kind of go over how we've got to where we are. In August, the fiscal year starts in July. In August, we put out a call for new projects. So we start our capital improvement planning process very early in the fiscal year. The purpose there is it's such a large part of the budget, like we just talked about, that we need time to pull all that information together, get it to Sabrina so she can get it programmed into models, and in other, look at the general fund revenue sources, the capital reserve fund sources, and even stormwater and POW bill and I'm sure there's one more that I'm missing. Transit, thank you. And transit, right? So she's looking across all of the not just the departments, but the funding sources for the city for the capital improvement plan. And so then after we get our call for projects, we get our new projects, and that's where we begin our focus. We start looking at budgets for those projects, where they fit into the window, that 10-year window. Do they need to be in next year, or do they need to be 3 years out, or do they need to be at the end of the window, 9 or 10 years out? And then we go through, if you'll remember, we sat down and we went through the current challenges that we're facing in water and sewer. Some of that is cost escalation, which is interesting because that was one of the things that we identified back in December when we presented this to you. And it's even more of a factor, as you just heard tonight. We look at our major programs and projects, and we presented those to you again at that December meeting, along with the draft CIP. And then we took the draft to City Council, I think, in January. So that draft is still valid. Still encourage you to go back through it, look at where those projects are scheduled. And then, of course, you heard tonight, Sabrina, on the water and sewer rate model, which is exactly what goes, all of that work goes into the rate model. And that same presentation was given to City Council. So that brings us to kind of where we are today. These are the new projects. These are the new projects that we gave you back in December. We haven't added any new ones. So for water and sewer, these are the ones we stuck with. Again, the reason for that is we know we're working on a water and sewer system model, or models, and a master plan. So we only wanted to identify those projects we knew we needed immediately. And then one or two of those projects, the water and sewer system model wouldn't have identified anyway. First example is the pipe barn. If you remember, I brought you a picture and showed how our pipe is exposed to the elements, UV being the worst. And it just hurts that our material storage. A model's not going to identify that. So we went ahead and programmed that and included that. The Highway 24, we identified a small piece of Highway 24 sewer. That was the piece that we had the east of the Rails to Trails project in the off-ramp coming from Wilson Gate going toward Western Boulevard. If you remember, we had that failure there. So we need to come through and line that section, so we programmed that section. So again, that's more of an emergent problem than it is something that we were planning for. And then we included the pump station rehabilitation program. That goes back to just what I was talking about trying to get things into a program, look at when pumps should be replaced, or some of those pumps you can rewind them or go through them and rebuild them and extend the life of them at a third of the cost of buying a new one. So that's the purpose of that program. Again, we were trying to get that program in place, even though we know the model's coming, because that's not what the model's going to look at, right? The model may look at the age of that station and make some recommendations, especially on capacity, but it's not going to say, hey, those pumps are 15 years old, you need to rebuild them in 2 years. So that's what that program is for. And then the last two are already programs that are in the window. They just come up on their rotation for FY36. So those are the new projects we went through in water and sewer. So not a whole lot of new projects in water and sewer, and most of those aren't high dollar value projects. As a matter of fact, I think the largest one's about $250,000 that's on that list. So relatively speaking, we really didn't add a lot to the CIP this year, which again goes back to why we're seeing less of an increase than we've seen in the past. So adjustments that we've made since we presented you the draft, we made some minor adjustments to expenditure schedules. We didn't necessarily add money to those schedules. We just moved the schedule around in the CIP. And I think I talked a little bit about this previously. Our CIP historically has done a very good job of identifying when a project should start and when the funding needs to be made available. We haven't done as great of a job of saying that project's going to take us 3 years, so we should show those expenditures in all 3 years, right? We know it'll start in FY27, so we program it in 27. We have to have all the money available in 27, but we may say we would have spent that money over 1 year or 2 years instead of a 3-year project, which is more realistically what it could be. So we've tried to go through our CIP and spread those expenditures out. That does help with the model because it shows cash flow. So that's why we're trying to get better at it. I will tell you we're not there yet, but we are trying to get better. Plus it gives council and the public and you a better idea of what projects are ongoing at any time and how long a project should be open. So if you have a major project in front of your house and you go in the CIP and you don't see it anywhere, you may question, well, why are they still spending money here? Because it doesn't show in the CIP. Whereas we had all that money funded, we just didn't show the actual project schedule. We've really used it as a planning tool, and a very good planning tool. We just haven't used it as much as an operational, this is where the projects fall out. And then we added funding to the I&I program. One of the things we found, because we just bid an I&I project, which is inflow and infiltration, and typically, traditionally, we've used cured in place lining where we line existing pipes. We really didn't have we had a lot of issues with that project after we bid it. There wasn't as much interest as we would have hoped. There was some confusion with the project. It was kind of a small area. And overall, I think the cost for the area we're doing was higher because we just don't have a really good project. Does that make sense? So what we did was added funding to that program so that our projects will come out more competitively. And that is included in the model. And then we added funding to the 400 acres infrastructure project. So water and sewer will fund the infrastructure that goes in, but we will recover our costs through system development fees and other methods. I think that by the time you see the final draft, that will likely adjust again because they're going through the design now, and as we're able to see the design, we're able to say, well, we should be tying in over here, or we should extend that size further, or we should run gravity sewer further into the project. And those things do impact the cost. The initial cost was based off of a sketch plan that didn't have a design associated. Now I would say we're about probably 60% design or so. So we have a better idea of the cost, but once we get closer to 90% design, we should have a very good idea of that cost. And we will hope to have that before we bring you the final version. And then we added funding through a budget amendment. It's already been added and approved by council. But I definitely didn't want you to think we snuck one by you or anything like that, because we added $1.5 million to that project. And that is to line the area that failed right at Christmas time with the exit in front of Sanders Ford coming downtown. So that project, we have to line 2,600 feet. That is varies anywhere from about 10 feet deep to almost 30. Plus we're doing all of the manholes. We have to go in, camera the whole section, clean it. But the bulk of that project will be the bypass operation we have to put in place. We will have to put a 6,100 foot bypass in place under Highway 24. So as you can imagine, that is not going to be an easy or cheap venture. We're actually, if you go by there, you'll see the pipe staging now. What we're going to do is fuse the pipe, and we're going to pull it through the existing culvert at Scales Creek. So we won't be digging or making any bores under 24. It'll be all on top of the ground, using existing culverts, and then coming back under 24 bypass, we'll use the existing pedestrian tunnels. So we're lucky that all of that's in place to utilize. It makes it a very far run, but it'll be easy access, pretty easy work. And I think we're doing that with, it's either, I think it's an 18-inch HDPE, so plastic force main, that will be fused together. So it'll have no fittings in it, no fittings, no taps, and there'll be a bypass pumps set up at Ellis Pump Station. So we will have to close 24 again to do the work, to do the actual lining, but it should be intermittent because they only have to close it when they're doing the work. So we may have adjusting schedules with DOT, and we may end up doing night work or other things to help that go smoother.
So where are you lining back to?
So we're actually lining from right where the failure was all the way to Montford Point, the memorial. So the gravity sewer actually runs diagonal across all the lanes of 24 in that area. The manhole is actually under the bridge right before, under the overpass right before Montford Point.
So what's the pipe on the other side look like?
Big black plastic pipe.
But it's not in.
You can see it from the road.
There's no issue with it failing?
No,
Okay.
no, it's probably like that thick. It's significant, and it's fused, so there's no fittings. It would just take a while to set up the bypass. So that's, that project, we just added, we had already identified the Highway 24 project, which was further up. It's the same, it's serving the same basin, same sewer line. So we just added the money, and Sabrina did that at the last meeting, or the meeting before last.
Sometime.
So we've already done that, a budget amendment. It is already in there, and it's also figured into the water and sewer rate model.
That was that pipe you put that sleeve in there and fixed it in front of Montford Point, didn't you, that one time?
We did, it's doing the exact same thing, just on a whole lot larger scale. Yes, sir.
'Cause I remember that, yeah.
So, and then, so the next steps are to give council a list of the changes also. I don't know whether we'll do that in workshop format, management report. I need to talk to the manager about how he would like to see that. We'll need to make any final adjustments to the projects. Like I said, we know that there's a couple out there that we may still have to adjust. And then we'll bring a final draft to you. We plan to do that at your April meeting. And then we've got to get a final draft to city council for consideration. And that will be part of their budget book that Sabrina will put out, was it the beginning of April? So April 7th. So you will, and when we bring you the water and sewer, my plan, unless you tell me differently, is to just bring you a whole new draft CIP. So you don't have to worry about taking pages out and putting pages in or anything like that. We'll just bring you a whole new document so you can replace the document. So the only other thing I'll ask is if you have any comments, questions, changes, send them to us. You can just email them right to Derek so that we can look at those and get those included in if there are any. And then what we would ask for you at your April meeting is a recommendation of support to carry forward as part of the budget. And then this is just the graphic view. Like I said, we were planning to bring you the rate model at the last meeting and we had to cancel. So we're getting it to you now, and then we'll have you the final next month. And with that, all I have for CIP.
Thank you, Wally. Thank you, Sabrina. We appreciate the information. Does anyone have any questions or additional issues that we need to discuss?
I want to ask Wally and Sabrina a question. So what, not together, separately. Wally, so we had a recent satellite annexation.
We did.
And what impact will that have on us? I mean, what's the number of customers we're looking at and who's going to provide the water?
So somewhere around 500, I think was the number. The sewer will come to us. The water will be provided by Onwassa.
On our bill? Or-
So, no. So we will charge, for satellite annexation, there are different statutes. For satellite annexation, you can charge the cost to provide the service to the area. So it will be a pass-through. We will bill Onwassa's water rate, our sewer rate, and we'll collect it and we'll remit the payment to Onwassa.
So it's exempt of the one-size-fits-all of all.
Correct. General statute allows a different rate based on the service for satellite annexation.
We just missed the boat with Country Club way back when, or it didn't exist that way?
No, I think the difference is it was contiguous and it was involuntary.
Oh, okay. Oh, involuntary.
Yeah, I think that's the two differences. We've done this, we've used this model in several places. We did it for Harvest Meadows, out off of Drummer Kellum Road. We did it for, there's another one too, I apologize, I can't come up with it. We used a different model for the Springfield, Crestfield development that's on Blue Creek Road. What we did there was a city system. So it's a satellite city system that buys bulk water from Omwassa. And what we unknowingly created a permitting nightmare. It is treated as a completely separate system. So the city holds 2 water permits for our system now, one for the city as a whole, and then one for Crestfield, Springfield. We have to do all separate sampling. We have to do separate reporting, separate CCRs, consumer confidence reports that we do annually. We have to hold, you can't have, without special permission from the board, not our board, the state, you cannot have, the same ORC cannot be the ORC of both systems. So now we have to have separate ORCs. So it was not a good model. We didn't realize what we were doing when we did it. So what we figured out is on satellite annexations, it's better to partner with Omwassa. They provide the water, we provide the sewer. So, and it would be, so on water would be charged at Omwassa rate, sewer would be charged at our rate.
So Sabrina, what's the current tax rate?
60.
60? It's revenue neutral.
What is revenue neutral? I don't remember the exact number, but of course, when we give the budget to council, we'll have it in there.
Oh, okay.
We're still working with the numbers. We just received the finalized numbers from the tax office, I think, last week. So, but we will present, of course, revenue neutral to council. But it will be lower than that, you know?
Yeah.
But I
know
don't.
the equation.
I think it's around, I want to say somewhere around 46, 47.
So what was the increase in the increase in property values, remember?
It was about 30% on average. That doesn't mean everyone.
Right, but the total,
went up,
it's about 30%. I like to work it out. Right.
Any other topics?
I do have one other one. I just wanted to kind of give you an update on an open discussion. Winter Storm Gianna. We had, of course, I won't say unprecedented, but unprecedented in the last 25 years or something. I think 89 is the last time I was a kid at that point, enjoying this snow. I did not enjoy it as much this time, as you can see. But during Winter Storm Gianna, I'll just kind of talk about the impact to water and sewer. Although I can share all of our impact because we do my team and I do a after action report for every incident like this. But for utilities maintenance, we started with basically 14 staff at the office at Public Services. They responded in two-person teams. By the time we were done, we had all of our staff in. By the time we were about midway through, we had all of our staff in. We had a total of 8 major water main breaks as a result of the weather. The challenge with that, all going at the same time, all had to be repaired immediately. None of them were small. The team going from, essentially, they split in half and went from one, they were repairing 2 leaks at a time, went from one to the other. We ended up having to call in a contractor to help us with one, and we called in assistance in a backhoe because one of our backhoes was down, and an operator from streets, and then we put our staff with them. So it was truly a team effort. We ended up working all the way through Monday in order to make all the repairs. So we had some significant challenges. We had a lot of calls, as you can imagine. There was a lot of private frozen pipes where, they either just woke up without water or they actually had a frozen pipe that led to a break that we had to go shut off. And matter of fact, Sabrina had a metering person on call, and that person performed a large number of tickets. And I don't remember the total number, but I was thinking it was something ridiculous, like 300 calls or something.
It was maybe not that many, but it was a lot of calls for one.
It was ridiculous.
One guy to do on his
He
own.
was busy.
He worked very hard. He did
Yeah.
a great job. We were very proud of him.
And then we had water plant. We only had minor, frozen walks and that kind of stuff where we had to be really careful. No power loss or water loss or anything like that at the plant. We did have to operate the plant. We weren't planning to put the plant into full operation during the storm, but because of the number of water leaks, we had to. Somewhere I had, so water system demand for Saturday was 3.9 million gallons. For Sunday during the storm, when did it hit? It hit Monday, right? So on Saturday, it was 3.9. On Sunday, it was 3.8. On Monday, it jumped to 4.3, and on Tuesday, it was 4.4. And on Wednesday, which I don't have on this sheet, it was over 4. So all of that was related to water main breaks. Let me rephrase. All of the number wasn't, but the excessive amount was related to water main breaks. And then at LTS, we had to keep people on staff around the clock to keep the headworks from freezing over. We were successful in doing that, although we had to we had to tent and heat the area and then maintain that with snowfall. And then one of the challenges that we really had at the water plant is, as you know, it's a remote location, and it did not get a lot of love from NCDOT because of the location. So the staff that was there had to stay there, and we couldn't really get staff in or out very easily. So they were there for an extended period of time. So I just wanted to kind of share some of the challenges we saw. So a lot of overtime during that period, and then we did have to call in a contractor to help. So that did affect impact our budget. So just a couple of pictures you can see, just extremely cold weather, difficult to work. In a lot of cases, we had to dig through the snow and remove the ice to get to the areas that we needed to work. And I wish I had a picture of it. I was there when one of our crew was in the hole working, and he got out, pulled off his boot, dumped it out, put it back on, and there was probably, he was wearing muck boots. There's probably a half gallon of water in his boot. He put it back on and got back in. So a lot of credit to our workers. They were very dedicated through the storm.
Wet and cold.
Wet and cold. So
Thank you all.
that's all I have.
All right, our next meeting is scheduled for 5:30, Thursday, April 9th, 2026. If there's no other business, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.